You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's REI Marketing Nerds podcast. As always, this is Daniel Barrett here from AdWordsNerds.com. How are you, you wonderful people? I am very glad to be back. For you, you might not have noticed a small gap, but I certainly did. I have actually spent the last week over in the Netherlands. I was sick. My voice was a bit raspy, and so you may notice some hoarseness in my voice in this episode, so apologies for that. But very, very glad to be back in the office and talking to all of you. And I've got a really interesting conversation this week. I'm talking to Dara Abasute. She is a real estate investor along with her mom down in Atlanta, and just a really fascinating person. And one of the things I love about this conversation is that Dara and her mom are relatively new to real estate investing, but they've been absolutely killing it. And it all started kind of randomly, right? But throughout their whole journey, there's this theme of them taking action and not waiting for everything to be perfect and getting out there, putting themselves out there and making things work. And it's just one of those things where if you've been in this business for a while or you're just getting started, listening to someone who's been through that experience recently and talking about how it felt and what they had to do, and it's just so valuable to kind of connect you back to your own roots and connect you to what you're going to need to move yourself forward. So I don't want to waste any more of your time. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Dara Abasute. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Daniel Barrett, and I am here with Dara Abasute from Properties ATL. You can find more about them at sellmypropertyatl.com. Dara, how are you?
I am wonderful, Dan. How are you?
I am doing also pretty well. I think I mentioned before we jumped off the phone that I am a little bit sick. So if my voice is a little raspy or nasally or whatever it is, I apologize for that. And of course, I also have some kind of construction going on outside my office. So it's going to be a noisier podcast than normal, but hopefully that'll be okay. But so I'm guessing from your domain name that you are down in Atlanta. Is that correct?
Good guess. Yes, I am.
All right, cool. Yes, I'm very smart. That's how I knew that. Cool. So tell me a little bit about you. So right now you are investing. Is your primary market Atlanta?
Yes, my primary and my only market for now is Atlanta or Metro Atlanta. So surrounding counties. And
is that where you live?
Yes, it is.
All right, cool. So how did you, let's kind of go back a little bit. How long have you been investing?
I started investing in 2016.
Okay.
So it'll be 3 years.
All right, cool. And what made you make the jump into the investing world? I mean, it's interesting to me because, before I got involved with investing and working with investors as clients, I didn't know that real estate investing even existed. So how did you first kind of come to figure out about investing? And then how did you decide to get involved?
Yeah, that's a great question because just like you, I didn't know real estate, anything existed. I just knew I lived in a house and that was about it. So I actually got introduced to it. I had just graduated university up in Pittsburgh and I moved back home here in Atlanta. And I knew that I wanted to take a gap year between undergraduate and grad school. I had plans and dreams and goals of being a physical therapist. And so in my gap year, I was working, traveling, and also applying to schools. And then it kind of hit me hard, actually, that I didn't get accepted to any grad school that I applied to, any program.
No.
Yeah. But it's crazy because at that same exact time, I think I maybe applied to 6 schools. Halfway through all the no's, maybe no number 3 or 4, I was driving with my mom and we heard a radio ad about a seminar, a real estate investing seminar coming to Atlanta. It was free, come out, bring a guest. I was like, hey, why not? I used to watch HGTV all the time. So I was like, okay, what's this about? So we went And then from there, I think by the time we actually, there's an upsell. So we went to the actual 3-day event. And by the time that rolled around in the 3-day event, I had heard all no's, like all 6 no's from the grad school. So I had already coped in my mind, like, okay, it's not happening. I'm not going to grad school. So it kind of happened simultaneously. One door closed, quite cliche and literally though, and another one opened. So I went to the 3-day seminar. And then from there, I met someone who was a part of RIA down here in Atlanta. And then my mom and I went out to those meetings, and we went faithfully, like every single day, to different meetings.
Yeah.
And then kind of hit the ground running and dug our feet in. And, I found a mentor actually through one of those meetings.
So I'm so curious. So, because, those seminars, obviously there's a lot of them and they attract a lot of people, right? Yeah. And my guess is probably like 99% of those people never get involved in real estate investing, right? So what was it about your situation that made you kind of really want to jump into it? Was it just like, well, you knew that the grad school thing was kind of falling through, so this was just kind of seemed like a great opportunity? Like what do you think made you take action on that?
I think that so I knew, like I said, after I graduated undergrad, I was so open-minded to all kinds of things. Like I said, I was traveling. I wanted to go teach English abroad, all kinds of things interested me. And so when I went to the 3-day seminar, it was literally an influx of information overload, but it was in a good way. I didn't know half the things they were talking about, but it was just so interesting. I really do like to learn. So I just learned a whole world of things. So at that time, yes, I was rejected from all the schools, but also my mom was kind of getting fed up with her job of her career of, decades. And so she was, on the verge of quitting or retiring from there. So all of that in one, she was like, I'm looking for something new, something different. And so was I. And so I think both of us were just so intrigued because we learned about creative financing and how you can use an IRA to invest in real estate, build wealth, rental properties, all this kind of great stuff. So I was like, let me give this a go. And yeah, like I said, I used to watch a lot of flipping shows on HGTV. And the presentation was, to me, just very, the guy, of course, they get all the best personalities, all the great energy to come in. Him. So I was like, I want to do this. So I think it was a combination of the fact that I was like, okay, well, no grad school for me. And then my mom was like, I'm over this job, and so we were just like, let's try it. Let's at least just try it.
So you and your mom invest together. Is that the case?
Yep.
So what is that like? I'm so curious because I love my mother. I love her to death. She's an amazing woman. Barbara, if you're listening to this, I love you. But she's not like coming on the board of directors at AdWords Nerds. So like, what has that been like? That must be really interesting.
People ask me that all the time. Like, I love my mom, but how? I would never work with her.
Yeah, everyone starts that by saying, no, I love my mom. I need you to know that I love my mother. But, there's always a but. Yeah. So what's that been like?
It actually has brought us a lot closer, believe it or not, because growing up, she was a pharmacist all my life and majority of her life. And I don't know if you know about retail pharmacy, but the hours are strenuous, like 12, 14 hours a day, 5 more days a week. So I almost never really saw her, all the extracurricular activities I did growing up, sports and things like that. She had time for us when she could. And
right.
I truly thank her for that, the sacrifice that she made. So once I graduated, she was still working, and like I said, she was just ready to just throw in the towel. So this was another opportunity also for us. We both had free time more or less at this point. So we were learning it. We both started at the same foot. People were like, oh, did you get your mom involved or did she get you involved? I was like, nope, neither of us knew anything at the same time. And then we learned it all together. So it has brought us closer. And then, of course, there's times where we like bump heads. She calls me the boss of her. She's like, every time people ask how it goes, she's like, oh, yeah, this is the boss. She tells me what to do now and things like that. But we have a system. And what I realized is just playing to our strengths. Of course, she's obviously still my mom and I have to, show her that respect. But there are things I'm just like, I just want you to get it done like how I get it done. Like, I'm a millennial. She's a baby boomer. So it's like technology and things like that. I'll handle it. Like, just let me handle it. And then she's, of course, like, I don't even know how I could do this without her because she's so much wiser than me. I feel like I'm definitely not naive, but I'm just very open and trusting in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for her, I don't know where I would be in this business. But so definitely good to have, to me, it's good to have that balance of young and older. It's good to have that balance of, I have all the energy in the world to go look at every property we can think of. And she's also a very huge financial help to the business. So it was her capital that got us started up and all our marketing and things like that. So it's definitely, like I said, it's brought us closer. There are very few bumps and things like that where we disagree, or maybe I get a little heated or hot-headed on some certain things. But overall, it's a good.
Well,
good.
I mean, it's so interesting because, your mom or your dad or your parents or whoever, raised you, you literally know them your entire life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of occupy this weird space where like they're not really people in like the sense of, you meet a person and you get to kind of view them on their own merits. They kind of occupy these larger than life roles. And so it's kind of interesting because you kind of get to relate to your mom in a different way. You get to see her as, having strengths and weaknesses like anybody else. And that must be really cool. Yeah, kind of like a way to deepen your relationship in a way that I don't think many families really get to do. You know what I mean? You're always kind of stuck in those roles you've been in forever, and you guys get to kind of build something new with each other. It's pretty awesome.
And it is awesome. And my dad is in my life as well, but he wants nothing to do with the business. He's like, y'all go have fun with that.
I'm sure he looks at it and he's like, okay, so it's like my wife and my daughter are starting a business together. You're like, I'm going to be in the back. Like,
yeah, exactly. I'll just cheer y'all on.
So let me ask you this. So how do you guys divide up? Do you guys both talk to potential sellers? Like who does the people aspect of it?
That's a great question. I was just telling somebody this too about, to me, the beauty of not doing this business alone at all. So if there's a case where I maybe said the wrong thing to a seller, or they're like, oh, this girl's sweet. Like, who's this little girl? Like, I'm too young or whatever. They don't take me seriously. We like tag team certain things. A lot of times we just divvy up the work. But if it's a situation where it's like, oh man, I said the wrong thing, or I should have said this, it's like, hey mom, just call this person and act like you don't, just act like a completely different stranger or whatever the case is, and get this deal locked up. So we definitely have tag team. That's one of the great things I like about having her, or just any partner in general. If you pick up in something, then somebody else can pick up the slack. But definitely, I think we're both really good with people, great people, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we are both really good with cold calling, and that's our main form of marketing. But we just divvy it up. So say if we have 500 calls or so, she'll do half, I'll do half. And then we'll go from there.
So that's interesting to me. I think let's talk about cold calling a little bit, because cold calling is a really popular form of marketing for real estate investors. But I think most investors, like most people, are kind of terrified at the prospect of cold calling, right? Like we've all had the bad experience where you're sitting down to dinner and somebody calls you and they're trying to sell you something, and you just, if you could murder that person over the phone, that's probably what would happen. Right? So I think many people are very nervous about cold calling. And so I think when a lot of investors do cold calling as a marketing channel, they outsource it to some company, right? Because they just don't want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So what's been your experience cold calling? Like what makes you kind of feel like that's what you're good at? What do you do on those calls that you feel like maybe makes that a little bit easier on you, or a little bit more likely to go well with the seller?
That is a great question. And I think that for me, this is going on our third year of doing this. I'm like, Dara, you have to let go of the reins, like let it go, outsource this, because, I want to free up my own time. But however this might sound, I really don't feel like anybody can do it better than me. I don't know. It's just, I really have a thing for building relationships with people, no matter how deep or how long they last or how shallow the relationship may be. But I really feel like one of my strengths is building rapport with people. So even if this person, we've been on the phone, I've been on the phone with sellers for 15, however long. And even if they don't want to sell it, I feel like I truly have gained something from, the conversation, or they've gained something from me, whether it's maybe not this house, maybe, you just never know. I look at people like you just never know what you can get from somebody. So I treat everyone with the same utmost respect, even those who cuss me out. Oh my gosh, those who cuss me out, I like literally have a smile on my face over the phone and they can hear it and it probably pisses them off or something. But I just feel like I'm a very people person, and it was never an issue for me, or I was never afraid to get on the calls, especially like I said, I had a mentor. So he gave me a script. So once I had something to say and I knew what guidelines, what I needed to say, I just remixed it, made it my own, and then went from there. And then the same with my mom. She's a very, very talkative, outgoing person. So, I mean, that's why I think we should outsource it, because we can't be on the phone for so long with people the way we are. But honestly, it's like, all right, next call, hurry up. But, maybe I probably honestly truly did get it from her. So she's really great with people. That was her business. So she interacted with customers all day, every day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and likewise. So.
Are you an investor who wants to dominate your local market? Do you want more leads and deals online? Then download your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint absolutely free at www.adwordsnerds.com/gift. What are you waiting for? Go to www.adwordsnerds.com/gift right now to get your copy of the Motivated Seller Blueprint.
When I was in college, my part-time job was I worked for what they call the annual fund, which was like the, it was like you had to call alumni and, they give you the script, which is like, hey, this is Dan calling from UMass Amherst. Like, what's up? And they'd be like, hey, and be like, oh, I was just wondering, what was your favorite thing that you used to do on campus? Like, I'm just, I'm a 19-year-old just calling this 45-year-old woman to ask her what's cool to do on UMass campus or whatever. And it was always such a weird experience. And it was kind of the same way where I never did very well on it, mostly because I just ended up talking to people for way too long and forgetting to ask for money and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's, it's so we're sort of laughing about it. But at the same time, I think treating the people that you're calling like people who you can actually connect with is pretty huge, because nobody likes the feeling of you're getting a call where this person just wants to get something from you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just kind of, they're looking to get through that process as quickly as possible and dump you out the other side. So I think the fact that you guys actually connect with the people on the phone and actually can carry on a conversation with them is probably a pretty big part of your success. I mean, would you agree?
I definitely would. And I definitely would. And like I said, I got to a point where it's like, okay, Dara, you maybe want to outsource this just for time's sake and efficiency. But I also said that I don't think anybody could replace me. So there was what time, I get the same calls too. We obviously live in a house and people are cold calling us too. So I always stay on the phone with these people just because they're like, hey, you're like me. I just want to hear what you say too. And so I've come across a few cold callers and they have a script, I can tell, and it's just straight to the point. It's just right to the point. Like, oh, how long have you lived here? What's the mortgage? Da, 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 da. And they just have these questions like, okay, well, this isn't a good fit. I'll call you later, or here's my offer. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then at one point I was like, oh, let me maybe copy that and get a script that's right to the point to bust out more calls. And then I was just like, it just didn't feel right for me. I just was like, I want to know about your day, and I want to know about the dog in the background that's barking. And
right. I think you're right that there's a logic to the idea of you're just trying to disqualify people as quickly as possible so you can move on. Yeah. Right. And I think that makes sense if you're doing things at a certain scale, but I don't know. I think in the end, having a conversation with someone and making a connection is pretty important, because even if they're not ready to sell you their house, they might be sometime in the future, or they might know someone who is.
Mm-hmm.
And no one ever refers anybody to the person that cold called them and was a jerk. You know what I mean? That's never going to happen. So what does your current marketing setup look like? I know you said cold calling is your primary channel. Is that all that you guys do? Have you tried other stuff in the past? what's your marketing stuff?
Yeah, when we first started, I think we tried everything you could think of. We did the bandit signs. My first deal was actually from a yellow letter. And that was something that me and my mom, I even got my brothers to help too. And we would literally handwrite them, hundreds and hundreds of letters by hand.
Yeah.
Even on vacation, we'd just be writing. So we did outsource our direct mail. But since then, I think we've just focused strictly on cold calling. And then actually this year is when, actually sometime last year, but we kind of kicked it into higher gear this year. We went online. So finally got a website and everything, got social media.
Yeah.
Instagram for us has been very booming, I would say. So we use social media. We have a website. And then we also looked into ads. So SEO as well as PPC.
Yeah.
And Facebook ads. So we definitely moved online too, because, that's future, that's technology. Everyone's Google searching everything. So
yeah. I mean, I also think too, it's interesting because, it's like something I always point out is like all marketing channels overlap somewhere. Right. So I think it's like very normal if someone called me and said, hey, I want to buy your house. Even if I was very interested in that, let's say I'm a really motivated seller. I know, at least for me personally, like I would want to go and then Google that person's company. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's, I kind of need some kind of like secondary verification to know like this actual thing that's happening. Right. So I think it's interesting and probably a really good idea that you guys are doing some kind of online stuff, because I'm sure it's going to kind of increase the effectiveness of the other stuff that you do at the same time.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And you're right. So many people will, when I'm on the phone with them, they're just like, oh, what's your website? Or even on the phone, like they want to look me up right then and there. And I'm like, okay, I have one. Because
do you like really lean into the fact that you're like a mother-daughter team, like in your marketing?
It is so funny that you asked that. It wasn't until literally like maybe last month recently that we started doing Facebook ads that we played that off. Like we played into that. Besides that, we never really like broadcast mother-daughter, but I'm sure you've seen like the bandit signs or maybe Craigslist ads like, hey, my mom buys houses. I just put out the signs or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's not anything I've ever done or said until we did create a Facebook pay or ad account and things like that. And it's like, okay, mom and daughter buy houses. And we got to see what that look like, what that would get as far as marketing goes. Now in person, everybody knows we're the mom and daughter team here in Atlanta and things like that.
Yeah.
So everybody loves that. But as far as our marketing, it's never literally when we sent out our direct mail, it was separate. Like I had my name on some pieces and postcards and she had her name. It was never, and I think because we wanted to do the tag team route, but
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting because obviously the tag team thing has worked really well for you guys in the past. So you don't want to mess with that at all. But I think people would really respond to the whole mother-daughter thing. And I think partially it's, I've talked about this before on this podcast, but, as like an investor competing with other investors, Atlanta's got a lot of investors in it. It's certainly a competitive market. So, it's so rare to have a company where you can actually connect with them or that stands out in some way. And, I always tell the story. I had a coaching student come through one of our kind of education programs where we teach investors to do online marketing. And he was in Houston. So Houston's a really competitive market. It was really, really busy. And he was a nurse. He was a full-time nurse, right? So he was like working in a hospital and investing part-time. And so his website ended up being Nurse Buys Houses. And his logo is like dude in scrubs and he just really leaned into it. And people really connected with that, right? Like it gave it like a backstory, right? So, when people said like, why are you doing this again? He'd be like, well, I work full-time and I love my job and I still want to do it, but I'm just kind of saving for retirement. This is how I do that. And people are like, oh, right. Cool. You know what I mean? Like they just immediately connected with that. And I think it's any time an investor can give some kind of story or something that's unique and stands out about it, like you're saying that those my mom buys houses kind of things. It just makes it different enough that it kind of lodges in people's brains. They kind of know what to expect. It's not some faceless, like, like we buy fast cash, like, you know what I mean? Like you don't feel like you're selling your house to a pawnbroker. You feel like you're selling it to, like a mother and a daughter, that like that whole story of like not getting into graduate school and your mom not wanting to be a pharmacist. And like, that's such a cool, like superhero origin story.
Yeah. Well, it's great that you say that because I never even thought about it. I never even thought about taking that angle until, like I said, recently on Facebook. And that was just a trial. Like, let's see how people respond to the mom and daughter thing. So
Yeah.
I think I honestly will like heavily move towards that angle. And I love the nurse. I love that nurse buys houses.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's like, I think people are like intuitively afraid of investors, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you know someone's job, so it's like, okay, your whole business, the reason you make money is because you buy things for less than they're worth, right? So it's like, that's the whole investing business model is I buy this house for less than it's probably going to be worth, right? And like, like you have to put in work and, you got to rehab it. It's not like whatever, but, but people hear that and they're like, okay, so they get real tense and they're kind of afraid of investors. Like they're going to get conned out of selling their house for something and they're going to get hurt in that process. And it's like, well, this is my mom. And, it makes it so wholesome somehow. You know what I mean? It's like, like, like American flag and apple pie and also mom and daughter buys houses. Like, it's a cool angle. I think that's neat. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. So what do you guys, you guys are like doing the Facebook ads. I know you're doing SEO, so it's like, what is your goal for this? Like where do you want to take this business eventually? Are you and your mom both full time in the business right now?
Yes, we are.
So where do you want to take it? Like in your like wildest dreams, what does the properties ATL kind of empire look like? Is it relatively small and it's providing a living and retirement for you guys, or is it like you managing teams of national people all over the place? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And is for me or for us is definitely not the national thing. We definitely want to keep it relatively small. I would say medium. So in between small and medium. Yeah. So it is definitely our vehicle, our way of building wealth. And my mom is currently in retirement. So this is, what's feeding her and us. So currently what we have been doing is wholesaling, and we've acquired a few properties and held on to them. So I think what we see long term is it being more of a buy and hold strategy. We want to break into multifamily as well, but I think we would just want to keep it a Atlanta or a local empire. We don't care to have a team of people in the franchise and we're in all these different markets. Now, as far as virtual wholesaling, that's something we've considered as well, but I don't think that we want to bring it to a company that one day we'd be able to sell and things like that. So it's just us, literally mom and daughter buy houses. Like we just want to acquire property just so we can get that passive income and residual.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's awesome. I mean, I think it's, there are so few businesses that are as good as investing at creating a business model where you don't have to be, it's like, not like you're tied to a desk 24 hours a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's like, if you want to create like a multi-million-dollar pizza empire, it's like, well, guess what? Like you're there all the time.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is. It's very hard to get out of that. And I think, if it's, whether it's passive investing or it's multifamily or whatever it is, it seems like the perfect match for you guys. And I know you guys are killing it. If people want to find out more about you, or, they want to know what you guys are doing online, is there a place where they can find you or learn more about you guys?
Yeah, definitely. We do have our website that people can visit. And I personally just branched out on my own. It's still in real estate and whatnot, but I do have a YouTube channel where I teach people about real estate investing.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. So the website is sellmypropertyatl.com.
Okay.
And my YouTube is just my name, Dara Abasute.
Okay. So Abasute, just so people don't know, it's the whole thing is Dara, and then Abasute is spelled Abasute. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, cool. And they can just they'll look up that on YouTube and they'll be able to find your channel.
Yes.
All right, awesome. And definitely I will, when this podcast goes live, you guys can go to adwordsnerds.com/podcast. We'll have links to both the Properties ATL website and to Dara's YouTube channel. So you guys can go and check out the stuff that you guys are putting out, because I think that's super awesome. And, one of my favorite things about the investing kind of community is how everybody kind of puts back into it and helps teach the next generation of investors. So I think that's super, super cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've found a really big liking in teaching. And I've had a growing following on YouTube that I never even imagined would ever be the case. So I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
All right, cool. Well, that's been awesome to get to know you a little bit, Dara. And I have to say, I think you and your mom really found something special there. And like I said, guys, if you are in the Atlanta area and you're looking to sell a home, or you want to follow up on Dara and her mom and see what they're doing, their website is sellmypropertyatl.com. Dara Abasute, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. It was a pleasure. I had so much fun.
All right, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do this again sometime, and I will talk to you very soon.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, everybody. That was it for my conversation with Dara. She is a really amazing person. Like I mentioned, I'm going to put the links to Dara's YouTube channel and her website over on adwordsnerds.com. You can find all the show notes for this episode and the other episodes we've done at adwordsnerds.com/podcast. That's adwordsnerds.com/podcast. And you can check out the other episodes as well. And hey, if you are listening to this and you're getting value out of the show, I would really love it and appreciate it if you could leave us a review. Leaving us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or iHeartRadio or wherever you're hearing this really helps other people find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. So if you could just go and leave us a review, good, bad, or indifferent, I read every single one, and it means a lot to me. So I will talk to you guys next week. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out to me on Facebook at our free Facebook group, the REI Marketing Nerds group. You can get there by going to adwordsnerds.com/group, and I will be talking to you very soon. Cheers, everybody. Bye.
This is the podcastfactory.com.